Give all the praise, all the glory, all the honor unto Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakah, Kodash. Double honors goes out to the elder apostles of Great Millstone for teaching me the truth. Also want to acknowledge all the Akyam who are pushing the truth with sincerity throughout the four corners of the earth. Shalom to the elect of the nation of Israel. This is Shabbai from the GMS Denver camp, and I'm going to read the 7th chapter in Luke, starting at the top. It says, "Now when he had ended all his sayings in the audience of the people, he entered into Capernaum, and a certain centurion's servant, who was dear unto him, was sick and ready to die." And a centurion is a captain over 100 men. That's what that position, that title entails, okay? So it says, "And when he heard of Yahushua, he sent unto him the elders of the Jews, beseeching him that he would come and heal his servant." And that word beseech means urge, like he's urging him to heal the servant. "And when they came to Yahushua, they besought him instantly, saying, that he was worthy for whom he should do this. For he loveth our nation, and he hath built us a synagogue." Then Yahushua went with them, and when he was not far, when he was now not far from the house, the centurion sent friends to him, saying unto him, "Lord, trouble not thyself, for I am not worthy that thou shouldest enter under my roof." So there's people who try to say that the centurion here is a Roman Edomite, right? He was a Roman centurion, but in fact, when we read the chapter, all of the indications points toward him being an actual Israelite. Just like right now, you have men who are a part of the police force or the military that are Israelites, who are so-called blacks, Latinos, and Native Americans, okay? So this centurion, he was an Israelite, okay? He shows humbleness here, that he not worthy for that Yahushua should go under his roof. The spirit of the Edomites, they're not going to do that. Like, you're not going to have Edomites telling the prophets on the street corners, like, hey, you guys can come under my roof and come and break bread with me, No, they think we're devils, and they don't like the Hebrew Israelites prophesying on the street corners, right? So this indicates and showing you that this centurion, he's actually an Israelite with faith. It says, "Wherefore neither thought I myself worthy to come unto thee, but say in a word, and my servant shall be healed." See, and that's the other thing. An Edomite is not going to have a spirit of belief when it comes to the truth and the knowledge and the true men of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, including Yahushai. They didn't believe he was the Son of God. And in this time, they don't believe we're the men of the Lord, you see. "For I also am a man set under authority, having under me soldiers. And I say unto one, Go, and he goeth, and to another, Come, and he cometh, and to my servant, Do this, and he doeth it." See, so he's expressing his authority as a centurion. He had men under him. "When Yahushua heard these things, he marveled at him, and turned him about, and said unto the people that followed him, I say unto you, I have not found so great faith, no, not in Israel." Right, because this guy, he was a Gentile, because he's a centurion in the military, the Roman army, and you have Christians, they'll say, "Oh, see, he wasn't an Israelite, he hasn't found faith in Israel," compared to this, what they think is an Edomite. They think this is talking about a centurion Roman Edomite, so-called white man. No, this is just an Israelite who grew up in Rome, who, moved up in his ranking, his position as a centurion, but he was actually an Israelite, a Gentile, right? The Gentiles that you read about, or that Yahweh Shai and the disciples were dealing with, teaching, talking to, they were all Gentiles of Israel, okay? Because you have to understand, our people became Gentiles, being Hellenized during the Greek captivity. So when they were set up in Rome, the Greco-Roman Empire, as they call it, our people were Gentiles. It was illegal to call yourself a Jew or an Israelite. You can read about that in the book of Maccabees. Another reason why the Edomites removed the Apocrypha, because there's lots of information that explains, the mystery of the Gentiles. Okay. Verse 10, and they that were sent returning to the house found the servant whole that he had been sick. And it came to pass the day after that he went into a city called Nain, and many of his disciples went with him, and much people. Now when he came nigh to the gate of the city, behold, there was a dead man carried out, and the only son of his mother. And she was a widow, and much people of the city was with her. And when Yahweh Shai saw her, he had compassion on her, and said unto her, Weep not. And that's Yahweh Shai. He has compassion. That's another characteristic of Israelites is, not only are we the people of faith, but we are compassionate people, It says in verse 14, and he came and touched the bier, and they that bare him stood still, and he said, Young man, I say unto thee, arise. And he that was dead sat up and began to speak, and he delivered him to his mother. So Yahweh Shai had the spiritual power to bring a dead man back to life, right? And there's a spiritual state of being dead, and then there's the actual physical. He was dead and he was raised up. And we're going to be able to do those type of miracles according to the scriptures. His men are going to do the same miracles he did, and he said even greater, right? Let's get that real quick. Let's see. It's in John 14:12. Because the spirit of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai are on the prophets, on the men, and we're going to be able to, do things that Yahweh Shai did, such as raising the dead, and even greater things, as it tells you in John 14:12. Verily, verily, I say unto you, he that believeth on me, the works that I do shall he do also. So what we believe in Yahweh Shai, we're going to be able to do the works that Yahweh Shai did, which we just read about him raising somebody up from the dead, and we're going to be able to do those type of things. When we get our faith and our spiritual power increases. Okay, because I always say we already have spiritual power right now. Teaching this gospel, understanding the scriptures, prophesying is a spiritual power in itself. It says, he that believeth on me, the works that I do shall he do also, and greater works than these shall he do, because I go unto my Father. And whatsoever ye shall ask in my name, that will I do, that the Father may be glorified in the Son. If ye shall ask anything in my name, I will do it. See? We just got to ask for Yahweh Bashem Yahushai to do, as long as it's righteous prayers, You're not going to be praying for, some bullshit, material gain, or, praying for something righteous in the name of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, and it's gonna be given to his elect. Luke 7 and where am I at? Okay, and it says, and he that was, verse 15, and he that was dead sat up and began to speak, and he delivered him to his mother. And there came a fear on all, and they glorified the Most High, saying that a great prophet is risen up among us, and that the Most High had visited his people. Okay? So, you know, our people are going to believe, you know, when they see miracles like that, because right now our people are in a dead state, the majority of them, and they don't believe in the ministry, they don't believe the truth, they reject the knowledge, so on and so forth. But when we start doing the miracles, our people are going to start believing us, right? It tells you in Psalm, let's get Psalms 110 and 3, it says, thy people shall be willing in the day of thy power. In the beauties of holiness from the womb of the morning, thou hast the dew of thy youth. And the dew of thy youth is this truth, this ministry. All right, so our people, they're going to be more willing to listen to the prophets, you know, during Jacob's trouble, when it gets super chaotic and they see miracles being done by the men of the Lord. That's when they're going to be like, oh man, these dudes are the men of the Lord. These guys that I've been, you know, mocking, making fun of them, talking shit about them, you know. People are gonna see miracles through the men of Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai, and it's gonna cause them to change their stance, and their faith is gonna be increased. Some of these people that, you know, they don't believe we're the men of the Lord, but they're gonna believe in that day. Okay. And we have the faith that these things are coming to us, these powers, the spiritual power, you know. You have to have a high level of faith to believe that you're going to receive spiritual power. Okay? We're going to need spiritual power with all the shit that Esau Edom, the so-called white man, that he's going to do to, you know, capture us, to try to kill us. He's going to be hunting us down in the streets, you know, especially when they implement the micro C-HIP. And the men who are, you know, avoiding and not taking that wicked device, you know, you're going to be an outlaw in that day, you know, and it's fastly approaching. You just look at the news, you know, you see all the arrows pointing towards the, you know, an RFID CHIP, you know, the digital money is ready to go. The, you know, digital IDs are already being mandated. And then we know where we know where they're going with that, you see. So let's read verse 17. And this was after he raised up the dead man. It says, and this rumor of him went forth throughout all Judea and throughout all the region round about. And the disciples of John showed him of all these things. And John, calling unto him 2 of his disciples, sent them to Yahushua, saying, art thou he that should come, or look we for another? Because they knew the prophecy. They knew that they knew that there was the Messiah was coming back on the scene, right? Was coming on the scene. That it was prophecy. The Messiah would walk the earth. That's why they're like asking, are you the one? Are you him? You know, like that movie Him. And that's a term they use nowadays too. Oh, I'm him. I'm him. I'm him. Well, Yahushua, he's the real him, you know. They even have that movie called Him with Marlon Wayans. But it's a term, you know, that people use nowadays. Jake, a lot of Jake, like, yeah, I'm him. That's him. He the one. You know, the real him is Yahweh Shai. Verse 20. When the men were come unto him, they said, John the Baptist hath sent us unto thee, saying, Art thou he that should come, or look we for another? And in that same hour he cured many of their infirmities and plagues, and of evil spirits, and unto many that were blind he gave sight. Right? And that's spiritually and physically he did that. Okay? Because when we teach this truth, and when we break it down according to the knowledge, because that's a spiritual power, for us to be able to break down the doctrine, the scriptures correctly with sound doctrine, we're removing the blinders that pagan Christianity and all these other false doctrines have covered your eyes with, and we're able to show you, like, yo, this is what this means. You see, and if you're of the elect, that blindness, you're gonna receive it. You're gonna understand it. Leading you to repentance, leading you to coming in the fold of Yahweh B'Hashem Yahushai, right? Because the elect are going to receive that spiritual eyesight. That's why it's called revelation. It means the word revelation. It means to reveal, to lift the veil from over your eyes. You can see it. Romans 11 and is it 6 or 7? 7. Romans 11:7. What then? Israel hath not obtained that which he seeketh for, but the election hath obtained it, and the rest were blinded. See, so only the elect are going to see and understand and be like, oh man, oh snap, that's what that means. Oh, that's what being dead means. Like when Yahushua said, let the dead bury the dead. I remember when I was young and I heard that verse, let the dead bury the dead. I had no idea what it meant. But now, because I'm not spiritually blind, I understand what it means. These people are dead in the spirit. You realize, like, yeah, that's what that means. These people who are deader in the spirit, they're physically burying their dead, family members or their dead friends or whatever the case is. You see. So. But when you're spiritually blinded, you don't understand those type of things. You don't understand the parables, the metaphors, the similitudes. You don't understand the prophecies. You can't see certain things that the elect see clearly, you see. Let's see. Verse 22. Then Yahushai answering said unto them, Go your way and tell John that the things ye have seen and heard, how that the blind see and the lame walk, and the lepers are cleansed, and the deaf hear, and the dead are raised. To the poor the gospel is preached. And who's the poor? We always tell you that the Israelites, because the majority of our people, they're poor in the spirit, and even when it comes to monetary situations, our people are the poor. Living paycheck to paycheck, You working just to get by, So the poor is talking about you Israelites. Because not only are you spiritual poor, the majority of our people they're not financially free. You know what I'm saying? You have some exceptions to the rule, but overall our people are the majority of our people are not financially free. Verse 23, it says, And blessed is he whosoever shall not be offended in me. Right, and that's why another way to discern who's the elect and who's not the elect are the ones who get offended at this doctrine, They get offended because so-called white man is not going to receive salvation. They get offended because you tell the woman she's not, by law, she's technically supposed to be wearing, women's apparel. You know, they get mad. Oh man, I'm gonna wear my Levi's. I'm gonna wear my jeans. You know, they get mad. Anybody who gets offended, you know, and we can't keep the laws to perfection. We always tell you, but it's good to, you know, once you know the laws, it's good for you to keep them to the best of your ability. You know, it says, and when the messengers of John were departed, he began to speak unto the people concerning John. What went ye out into the wilderness for to see? A reed shaken with the wind? But what went ye out for to see? A man clothed in soft raiment? Behold, they which are gorgeously apparelled and live delicately are in king's courts. But what ye out for to see? A prophet? Yeah, I say unto you, and much more than a prophet. Okay, because these people, they didn't believe, our people didn't believe that in that day, that first of all, they didn't believe that Yahushua was the son of God, of Yahweh. And they didn't believe that John the Baptist they didn't believe he was a prophet, you know. They saw him, you know, in his humble apparel, right? In his sackcloth, in his camel hair garment, right? And is eating locusts with honey. So they're like, who's this dude? This dude ain't no man of the Lord, you know? They think a man like that'd be crazy, you know, before they believe he's a prophet. And it's the same thing with us. That's why when they see us, they you know, the majority of the people they're not set up to believe that we are the men of the Lord. They perceive us as unlearned men, just like they did the disciples, right? Let's get that real quick. Because their first initial reaction when they see us on the streets, they don't think that we have this knowledge that we do. They don't think that until they hear us speak, you know, whether they deny it or admit it, you know, we have the understanding, we have the breakdowns, we have the, you know, nobody can deal with the scriptures the way the men of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai do. Nobody can, you know, nobody's on our level when it comes to these holy scriptures. Acts 14:13. Now when they saw the boldness of Peter and John, they perceived that they were unlearned and ignorant men. They marveled, and they took knowledge of them, that they had been with Yahushai. See? So when they saw Peter and John, they see him wearing sackcloth, humble, you know, base men in that society. But in fact, you know, these are men who we're reading about, and every single person that's ever picked up a Bible, you read about Peter and John. And guess what? They were men of the Lord. But when they were on the earth, people that saw them didn't account them as being the men of the Lord. And that's the same way they do the Hebrew Israelites who are on the street corners. They don't believe we're the men of the Lord. How can these guys be the men? You know? That's their attitude. You mean to tell me? You know what I'm saying? Luke 7 and let's see. Verse 23, 20. Oh no, wait, I'm already down to. It says, I'll read 26 again. It says, but what went ye out for to see? A prophet? Yeah, I say unto you, and much more than a prophet. This is he of whom it is written, behold, I send my messenger before thy face, which shall prepare thy way before thee. Which this is talking about John the Baptist, which it also talks about Elijah the prophet in Malachi, the 4th chapter, the last couple verses. You go read that. Elijah the prophet was John the Baptist, and also was Abba Bivens, you know, the elder Abba Bivens, set up here by Yahweh Bashem Yahushai as the first person to teach the so-called blacks, Latinos, and Native Americans here in America, Babylon, America, that you are the Israelites. Elder Abba Bivens was the first to teach that. It says, "For I say unto you, among those that are born of women, there is not a greater prophet than John the Baptist, but he that is least in the kingdom of the Most High is greater than he." You see? Yeah, because the Israelites are going to be in those spiritual bodies. John the Baptist was in the flesh. So even though he's a great prophet here on the earth, when he was on the earth, and also Elder Abba Bivens, they were great prophets, but in their celestial new bodies, they're even greater, right? It says, and all the people that, and because, when you're in that spiritual body, you're not going to be sinning. You're going to be in your right mindset. You're going to be in perfection, okay? That's why it says that. And verse 29, and all the people that heard him, and the publicans justified the Most High, being baptized with baptism of John. But the Pharisees and lawyers rejected the counsel of the Most High against themselves, being not baptized of him. Yeah, they rejected John the Baptist just like they reject us, just like they reject Yahweh Shai. It's a common thing for the true men of the Lord to be rejected, right? And that's probably what I'll name this. You people, you so-called religious people, the men that you follow, the men you think are men of the Lord, more often than not, they're actually wicked men teaching false doctrines. Like you got people like, oh, I follow Joel Osteen, or I follow T.D. Jakes. He's a great speaker. Or even Bishop Nathaniel, These are not men of the Lord. And until Bishop Nathaniel repents, he's not a man of the Lord. It says in verse 31, and the Lord said, whereunto then shall I liken the men of this generation, and what are they like? They are like unto children sitting in the marketplace, and calling one to another, and saying, we have piped unto you, and ye have not danced. We have mourned to you, and ye have not wept. Right? Or John the Baptist came neither eating bread nor drinking wine, and ye say he hath the devil. Right? And then the other thing I want to make the point of is, this is what they do with the men of the Lord. Because we're piping unto you. Remember, yesterday I did my lesson mentioning how when we do these camps and we do these lessons, we're actually, singing a song. Remember, Revelation 14, the elect are the only ones who can learn that song, the 144,000, right? So we're out here piping to you, meaning we're singing. We're when you read Psalms, you're actually supposed to sing the Psalms. That word psalm, it means song. And we're singing, but you're not dancing. We're out here mourning, but you're not crying. If you're not in your right mindset, you're not weeping with, spiritually with the men of the Lord. Because we're out here sighing and crying for all the abominations that we're in the midst of. Like it tells you in Ezekiel 9:4. For John the Baptist came neither eating bread nor drinking wine, and ye say ye have the devil. And the Son of Man is come eating and drinking, and ye say, behold, a gluttonous man and a winebibber, a friend of publicans and sinners. But wisdom is justified of all her children. And that would say sons in the Hebrew. It would say, but wisdom is justified of all her sons. So wisdom, how is wisdom justified? By the true men of Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai. It's not justified by all these false prophets and all these people they call themselves religious. They're going to the pagan Christian church. They're going to, the Kingdom Hall. They're going to all these different whorehouses, right? As that's a metaphor, you can call them whorehouses, because you're not going to find no truth in there. You're cheating on Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai, basically when you're in these false churches. That's why you're like a whore, a spiritual whore. All right? Wisdom is justified of her sons, which is the men of the Lord. You're not going to, let's see. Where's that verse? Let's grab that real quick. I think it's in Proverbs. Yeah, Proverbs 1:20 it says, "Wisdom crieth without, she uttereth her voice in the streets." So who's on the streets crying out? The Hebrew Israelites, the men of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. She crieth in the chief place of concourse, in the openings of the gates, in the city. She uttereth her words, saying, How long, ye simple ones, will ye love simplicity? And the scorners delight in their scorning, and fools hate knowledge. You see, a fool is a non-believer. A non-believer hates the knowledge. It hates the truth. They don't even want to hear. They don't even want to accept that we are the men of the Lord, right? But the wisdom is crying out in the streets, right? Not inside a building, not inside a big mega church, a big mega building. No, in the streets is what the Bible says. Okay? We're almost done here. It says, verse 36. I'm going to read down to 39. So it says, And one of the Pharisees desired him that he would eat with him, and he went into the Pharisee's house and sat down to meat. And behold, a woman in the city, which was a sinner, when she knew that Yahushua sat at meat in the Pharisee's house, brought an alabaster box of ointment, and stood at his feet behind him, weeping, and began to wash his feet with tears, and did wipe them with the hairs of her head, and kissed his feet, and anointed them with the ointment. Now when the Pharisees which had bidden him saw it, he spake within himself, saying, This man, if he were a prophet, would have known who and what manner of woman this is that toucheth him, for she is a sinner. You see? So they were hating on Yahushai. And they would do that to us too. Let's say some woman who had some type of faith, which this lady it says in the scriptures that she was a sinner. But yet, what does she do? She wiped his feet with her hair. And that's like an amazing gesture. Someone with great faith would do that. Especially when you have these people who are like, man, this is not the Son of God. These aren't the men of the Lord. But could you imagine that? And they wore sandals in this age, in this era. We don't have sandals. We have, brothers wear, Nikes and whatnot. But let's say we was wearing sandals and you had some random woman with that type of faith to come up and do something like that. You know what I mean? That's like whoa, I mean, we've had straight up just street people, you call them bums, come by the camp and they'll just bow down. They won't say anything. But how much better are they than the ones who come up against us, or the ones who deny the truth, or the ones who say that we're devils, like they called Yahushua and John the Baptist, right? So I'm going to go ahead and close out on that. I want to give all the praise, all the glory, all the honor unto Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rekah Kudash. Double honors goes out to the elder apostles of Great Millstone for teaching me the truth. Also, want to acknowledge all the Akyam who are pushing the truth with sincerity throughout the four corners of the earth. A shalom to the elect. Shalom.